welcome to the Meeting with HR podcast.
And I'd never thought of that. So it was pretty groundbreaking.
Who's Perry Timms? What does life look like?
A product like yours almost ought to explode with positive data. It felt like it was a bit caged. So I thought, and now I'm unemployable.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Your title is Chief Energy Officer. So 4 books.
Yeah.
You're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
2 TEDx's.
Yep.
You were awarded the World Blue Lifetime Achievement Award.
And then they called out number 1 and it was me. And I was like, I am not prepared for this.
Where would you advise somebody to start? Yeah.
We shouldn't have a let's transform program. It's let's naturally emerge into this. HR literally pushes us on.
What is the single biggest thing, do you think, that gets in the way of people flourishing at work?
There's more people queuing up. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, seriously?
You can tell that you enjoy the work you
thank
do.
you.
You're in exactly the
Thank
place
you.
that you're meant to be
Thank
in.
you.
Hello and welcome to the Meeting with HR podcast. My name's Elly, your host and co-founder of EDA, where we are eradicating boring surveys for good. Now, every month I'll be sitting down with a CEO, a people leader, a head of HR, or somebody that's doing amazing things in the people space. And I'll be finding out exactly what they're up to, how they're affecting some company cultures, and how they're making the workplaces that they're working with that little bit more human. And I am excited today to be joined by the fantastic Perry Timms. Perry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Elly. Great to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on.
Oh, so am I.
I've been wanting to have you on as a guest for so long.
Like, boom. Yeah.
And
I
here you
know.
are.
I know. Same.
Well, thank you for coming on. So,
Pleasure.
Perry, you have, when you describe your experience at work,
Yep.
you have a 30 plus, 20 plus, 10 years plus
Yep.
model.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Okay, so I've been in the workplace for over 30 years.
Yeah.
So part of that is that most of that has been in change. And it was only in retrospect that I looked at that and thought, oh, wow, I kind of did traditional admin for a few years, but the majority of it is in change.
Yeah.
The 20 plus is when I moved into HR in a much more sort of defined role. I started in the learning and development field. And then the 10 plus is as an independent, still in the HR world. But it almost feels like the HR world is the core of it, but the whole world of work is the wraparound for it. Yeah. And somebody gave me a beautiful phrase a couple of weeks ago that my work is about work. And I'd never thought of that. And it's like, wow. And I've been doing that forever. The change work was about work. The HR stuff was largely about work and people in that. And the work I do now is about the work that companies do. So that's me in those timeframes. Yeah.
Your work is about work. You've got a wealth of experience. And what made you go from full-time kind of HR employment to setting up PTHR, your own consultancy? Yeah.
So I've always had this sense that I like operating at the edge of known practice. So when I was in tech projects, the work that we were doing was largely pioneering because it was in the government arena. So it was pretty groundbreaking. And I really reveled in that whole sense of possibility and emergence. And then I went into HR and I picked up learning and development and org design and change. And it felt like I was still at the edge. And then just before I sort of had this sensation, it didn't feel like I was at the edge anymore. It felt like it was a bit caged. So I thought, And you look up and you know, my boss was the HR director. And I thought, I'm not sure I've got the stripes or the yards or the acumen to do what you do. And I've said this on another podcast. Besides, what I don't want to do is senior leader adult daycare. I want to do the work that matters for people, right? So I thought, I bring in freelancers. I might have a go at that. Quite literally, it was like, let's just see how it goes. Okay. And in the end, it was the complete divorce from the corporate affair that I'd been in. Yeah. And now I'm unemployable.
Yeah. No one will take you.
Yeah, exactly. There's no job that I would be drawn to, honestly. No.
Yeah, I think once you've kind of carved yourself out of that corporate workplace environment, it's very tricky to then dip your toe back in.
Oh, yeah. No matter how hard it is, the agency and the choice, and you just define your own edge. That's something I'm like, I cannot give that up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you on that.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. And then outside of doing work about work, Who's Perry Timms? What does life look like?
Oh, okay. So I'm probably not as sort of vibrant and bouncy as I am in work. I'm a little bit more sedate, perhaps, and thoughtful and quieter. But I mean, I follow Northampton Town, so I go to the football and vent a bit of frustration there because they're not a great team. I follow the Detroit Lions in the NFL, so I've been watching American football since the mid-'80s, and I love it.
Oh, amazing.
Kind of played it very briefly. It's a lot harder a sport than it looks, even with the padding and helmets. But I'm a massive Northern Soul fan. So I've been into that since my teenage years.
I didn't know that.
So I've got a pretty big and very well originated vinyl collection.
Okay.
So I love nothing more than a DJ set for one.
Yeah.
With the vinyl, and I almost like inventing playlists as if somebody was asking me to.
Yeah.
So that's very geeky, and there's nothing I don't know about Tamla Motown. So if there was ever a mastermind round for me,
That would be your
it would be
topic.
Tamla Motown. Yeah.
Wow. So you do that at home? You play your
I do.
vinyls at home?
I do.
You?
I do.
You should set up your own YouTube channel and stream it.
That is a possibility,
People would
and
watch.
people SoundCloud and put mixes out. I've sort of dabbled in that,
Yeah.
and I think there's probably something about wanting to leave a bit of a legacy that I might do that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
what about Northern Soul dancing? What are your dance moves
I
like?
used to be all right at that.
Really?
Not so much of the gymnastic moves, but yeah, the kind of shuffling thing that you see on things like John Newman's video and stuff like that, and Pharrell Williams' Happy. So Northern Soul's got a massive rejuvenation,
Yeah, it has.
not just in Manchester where it all started at the Twisted Wheel, but Bristol has a huge scene, and lots of young people are rediscovering it and
Yeah.
collecting vinyl. And I'm like, oh, I love this.
Yeah, amazing.
So yeah,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then before we get into, I guess, the meaty stuff about work and all the stuff that you're up to at the moment, what does a day look like for you? So what does a Tuesday look like for you?
So a Tuesday is often either client stuff, so I'm actually on site because that's kind of come back in a bit. And if it's not that, then I'm pretty much like anybody. I have a succession of calls. So there are still quite a lot of things I can do virtually, connecting with the team and just kind of, I suppose, linking with clients. But then I love a bit of deep working space. So sometimes a Tuesday can be a little bit quieter. So I like to get into a bit more immersive stuff, which is often research, design and so on. So there's probably 3 permutations to a Tuesday. I try not to make them clash because I like to kind of go, I'm in the client zone, I'm on the call zone, or I'm in the deep working zone.
Yeah.
So I try and do that as much as possible because I think there's a kind of rhythm that you get into. The client stuff's super exciting and maybe keynoting. The call stuff is just, I mean, time just disappears, but you obviously have to kind of service those kinds of elements of work. The deep working I really love because I just get to go almost like into an immersive state and almost semi-meditated at some points. That's when I think I do my best thinking and work,
And geek out and research.
Geek out, for sure, yeah.
What is there anything you can share that you're working on at the moment?
Yes, there is actually. So back in the early to mid 2000s, I was kind of curious about the way work was so regimented. Working in the civil service, you kind of expect it, but everywhere was. And then somebody recommended a book by a guy who took over his father's engineering business in Brazil, fired all the managers, gave all the engineers P&L, decision-making, clients and so on, and it was a real success. The book's called Maverick, and it's by a guy called Ricardo Semler.
Yeah.
So the company was Semco. So I'm now working with him. So I say to people, this is like me writing songs with Smokey Robinson. It's such a gift. And he's got almost like a new version of how organisations can deal with change, transformation and performance. So I'm kind of helping him with the products, the model and the method. And it is literally, I'm kind of pinching myself thinking, wow, how did this ever happen? Yeah. That's a really big piece for me. And then client work in workforce planning, org design, strategy into action. So everything feels very active, which is nice. So, I've got a real mixed bag at the moment.
Yeah, you do. It sounds like you've got a lot on. And your title is Chief Energy Officer, which I absolutely love.
Oh, great.
I always said that I wanted my title to be CHO.
Oh.
Which, can you guess what it
Chief
be?
Happiness Officer?
Chief Happiness Officer.
Okay. There's a few of them.
There is. It's actually started to rise a little bit as a title, hasn't it? So, Chief Energy Officer, it's not something you see on a lot of business cards.
No.
Where did it come from? What does it mean?
Yeah. I'll kind of go near and then go back to the story that originated from it. So there are 2 books, one written by a professor from Michigan and one from a German entrepreneur called Chief Energy Officer. And I think they've got the same ethos that I've got, which is as the kind of the head of an organization, the kind of founder, source, or whatever it might be, to be an executive feels a little bit administrative, right?
Yeah.
But what are you there for? You are there to channel the energy of the market and the product and the service that you have, the people you do it for, the communities around it, the planet, your people. So it's almost like you are bringing all these energy forces together and kind of lining them up.
Yeah.
And actually at times you also need to energize, so be inspirational, visionary, calming, whatever it might be. But the real story to this goes when I work with a client and she said, can you work with different teams in different weeks just to see how you can help them out? So it's quite emergent. I loved it. So I'd work with the ER team one week, I'd work with the talent team the next week, I'd work with learning development the following week. After a while, I sort of said to the HR director, I said, I'm really enjoying this and I think it's working. I said, but I just don't know how successful it feels to you in what you wanted me to do. And she said, well, I'm telling you now that after you've been with a team, she says, I can see their energy levels are up for the week following.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. She said, and that does for me. I'm like, okay. And that's the energy thing. I thought, maybe that's how I could hack the E in CEO.
Yeah.
And there's a great guy from Microsoft called Dave Coplin who calls himself the Chief Envisioning Officer because that's what he does. He visions the future. So I thought, I'm going to play with that because I just didn't feel like the executive word was who I am.
Yeah. I completely agree from my side as well. And it's, I guess, the corporate lingo that's used. And it's really hard. So in that example, for that lady to measure that energy uplift is really tricky. It's just like a human sense and a human feeling, isn't it? And people talk about being more human at work and running more kind of human-led organisations, but that stuff is actually quite hard to measure.
It is, and it's really difficult to put numbers to.
Yeah.
But what she would say when I sort of probed it a bit further was that they had more appetite to do challenging things, so the morale was quite high. She said, but they work more collaboratively because they sort of express their work a little bit more. She said, and without that energy, people had their heads down quite a lot. So I kind of like that because you create almost like a little social ripple that actually invites people to help each other out rather than just sticking in your own lane, right? So, yeah, it is difficult to measure. I did ask her, I said, well, are they more productive? She said, well, I see better work. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's great because I don't feel like I've given them that. That's come out from them quite naturally. So I said, there's no kind of causal link there, but I'm happy to be the catalyst for that to happen.
Yeah, which is a sign of a great leader. And people, when they think of a leader that's affected them in a positive way or a great leader, it's often hard to put into words as to just why exactly.
Because it's a feeling.
It's a feeling.
Yeah,
it is.
Great.
So you've been doing this for PTHR for over a decade now.
Yes.
You've written how many books?
So 3, and one of them has had a second edition. So you could say 3 titles, but 4 books. Yeah,
it's incredible. Amazing work.
Thank you.
So 4 books.
Yeah,
you're in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
2 TEDx's.
Yep.
You're a guest professor at 4 universities.
Yep.
You were awarded the World Blue Lifetime Achievement Award. Did you get a space to breathe ever?
Well, I mean, the thing is that I don't do them all at the same time, obviously. But there are a series of things that I didn't chase.
Yeah.
But kind of when they come, you're like, oh, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah.
So it's a huge moment to sort of reflect on it as a not kind of gold medal achievement, because a lot of those are sort of peer nominated or they're invited in by somebody who has faith in what you do. So I think that's really lovely because that's the sort of endorsement of you that you couldn't buy no matter what. I get lots of people who send me these emails saying, for $2,500 you can feature on the front of our magazine. And I'm like, I'm paying for that. That's not how it is. But I love it that peers and other professionals want to do that sort of thing for you. There was a bit of me at first that felt almost overly humble. Like, I'm not going to make a big deal out of this because I'm not that kind of show-offy person. But I thought, actually, I'm sort of dishonouring it a little bit on their part if I don't play into that, if I don't be that. So that doesn't mean you humble brag. It just means you keep a sincerity to it. But obviously they've done that with a reason, and it's great for you to let people know what that means to you and what you're going to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's definitely something about honouring that.
Yeah, it's really inspiring for the people to look up to. And how do you get the HR influencer awards. How does that come around?
So my first ranking on that list, I'd watched that list for a few years and thought, oh, that's a great idea. Never thought about whether I'd get on it or not. But a client nominated me.
Okay.
And apparently when that happens, the people behind HR Magazine just do a bit of a scan, they start to look at your work, and they sometimes ask other people, and they almost validate that nomination. So that's how it works. So I thought, oh, that's really nice. So that client stepped into that. And then obviously when you're on the list, you sort of get known a bit, and it sort of repeats.
Yeah.
So the year before I got number 1, I was number 2, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. So I thought, that's it, I've peaked. So I went the year after, and I thought, if I'm still on the list, that's great. If I'm in the top 10, even better. And they called out number 3, they called out number 2, and then they called out number 1, and it was me. And I was like, I am not prepared for this. I am not prepared for this at all. So it was on board HMS Belfast. I was on holiday in the New Forest at the time. I had to get a train in to go to it. And so I completely unprepared. And obviously they like you to stand up and say a few words. And I did. And what came was just so instinctive for me. It was almost like the gift that we get given in the HR profession, which is that we look after the conditions for people to be who they could be.
Yeah.
And I found myself talking about this and economics and things that get in the way. I don't know where it came from. I was kind of captured in the moment. But that showed how much that meant to me.
Yeah.
And then after that nomination, I kind of genuinely thought to myself, this has to be for some good. What can I do with this? And it was in September that year, so it's kind of not halfway through, but about a third of the way through. I started to think the way HR operates hasn't really been reshaped in about 25 plus years, right? So I started to sketch out a potential way that HR could recalibrate itself and reorient itself. That became a feature series in the magazine, and that became the third book, the HR operating model. So that nomination and achievement gave me a sense of putting something back into the profession in a nice way. And actually I've been geeking out on operating models ever since.
And reshaping it.
Yeah.
So that kind of was the domino to fall to make you think, right, something needs to change here.
Yeah.
So with the HR operating model, so that is the book that was released last year that you created, which is, I saw it's a HR 3.0.
3.0 is what I've kind of called the model.
Yeah.
Kind of links to Web 3.0, but we are sort of on the third iteration of HR anyway. If you look at the original concept of personnel into HR as being 1.0, and then Dave Ulrich's model as kind of 2.0, then it felt like 3.0 was kind of the version we're headed to. Yeah.
So what is the HR operating model? What is 3.0? What does that mean?
I've looked at operating models and thought some of them get overly complex. So I did some research and found, I can tabulate quite a lot, but that's baffling to me. And then some of them are just like the current version, perhaps with go faster stripes. I'm like, So what an operating model really should be is like the blueprint for how you operate. When it starts getting into intricacies about roles and capabilities, you're like, well, that's your org design. So you have to kind of keep it at a level that it doesn't quite build so much that it's predictable, right?
Okay.
So I often say it's kind of like flat pack furniture a bit, right? But then what you put in that flat pack furniture and how you position it in your room and so on, that's your org design. But actually the flat pack furniture has a blueprint for how you put it together. That's the op model. So it's built on 4 intersectional circles because I didn't want to create what's existing now with the go faster stripes. I thought I'm going to recalibrate this, and so there's a horizontal and a vertical. So the horizontal is underpinned by people operations, process, all the things we have to do for compliance and regulation and certainty for people, so that if they're in a situation where they've got a bit of a crisis at home, they know what the employer can do in terms of processing to help them out. So people ops is the founding kind of circle. Then the one above that on the kind of vertical side is products. Now, I've been into Agile for as long as I've been into the whole autonomous organizations I talked about earlier. And Agile has this beautiful way of kind of saying, actually, what you're doing is you're making a product, even if it's not a real product. It's just like an intellectual concept. And a lot of HR work is quite intellectual concept, right? So think about things like policies, learning and development programs, and so on. They are a product because people use it, they consume it, they get it to do things for them. It has an outcome and an impact. There's value to it. And it often means that that's only version 1. There's a version 2, a version 3, a version 4. So I thought HR absolutely needs to go down the product route because sadly, we do a lot of things so by the book. They become meaningless for people who look at a policy and go, I don't even know what that's saying. So I'm like, we should build it from like the user back, the outcome and for the user back. So products is that part.
Yeah.
And then the two things I absolutely wanted to urge HR to just double down on was systems, technology systems, analog systems, decision, power, influence, morale, psychology, whatever, and then link to that science. Because I think HR has a lot of science behind what it does and doesn't let it out to play and reveal it and play a strong hand.
Yeah.
So if you think people, ops and process, products, systems and science, everything stems from that. That should be the operating model.
Yeah, I love that. Amazing. How
Yeah.
long did you work on that for?
So I started it in September 22
Yeah.
and I wrote the book at the back end of 24, early 25. And in between that, I just did a ton of research, looked at what other people were doing. And I've got lots of lovely friends in HR. So I shared it with them saying, look, this might be a bit nuts, but what do you think? And a couple of them came back and went, it's a big leap. But a couple of them said, that's kind of what I've been thinking of. And they've gone on and brought it in.
Yeah.
So there's a wonderful colleague of mine in the charity world who literally got a team together and said, what do you think to this? And they all kind of played with it. And she said, let's do it. And so she's been operating like that since about the back end of 23. And I'm like, wow, this is how it should be, though.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have a let's transform program. It's let's naturally emerge into this. So I love that. And I wanted this model to be something we could own in whatever context and whatever sector you're in, so that it's not a prescriptive lift and shift.
Yeah.
It's what is it calling you to do? And how do you want to calibrate all your machinery and unleash all your talent within that? Yeah.
And be intentional with it as well.
Massively.
I think when you were talking about the science part of the model,
Yep.
it made me think that I feel like a lot of HR and people professionals get into this space because, and that's normally the draw, is that kind of
The
psychology side of things, why people do what they do.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when you actually get into practice, it becomes this kind of police policy procedure kind of world where they're just putting out fires and things, books are just piling up
Crises,
on their desk of things
whatever,
to do.
You're right. And I don't think we wish for that to happen.
No.
But I think organisations have a lower appetite for adaptability and a high spotting of risk and kind of force us to play in that space, right?
Yeah.
I don't often see HR directors who go willingly into let's do it that really formal way.
Yeah.
But if a business leader is really unsure, they kind of have to play that. So I think it's revealed a bit of an immaturity in the business world about people more than our tendency to mechanise. So I think we've got caught in that.
Yeah.
And I think what's really nice is we can liberate ourselves from that.
You talk about organisations needing to shift from optimising their parts to evolving their whole, which kind of links to what you're talking about. It made me think about the organisation as if it were a car, and it wouldn't kind of run if you didn't look after all of the parts individually.
Yeah, good metaphor.
So what does, if you were going to an organisation and you were with your hat on of the HR operating model and this kind of optimizing their whole.
Yeah.
Where would you advise somebody to start?
Yeah.
If there was, if I was a HR director for a 500-person company, maybe have a small team, where should they start?
It does require a kind of zoom out in the way that you just talked about, actually, which is when you look at the car, you don't just open the hood and look at the engine and get right into that. You stand back and look at it, don't you? And you kind of think, where's this going to take me? And how can I kind of have a sense of pride in it? So you do have to do that for HR work too. And what you have to do in that zoom out is go, like, why do we exist? Like, what's it all about? And you don't just do that with a predictable series of tasks. You start to think at a really powerful high-level impact. Is it to help this business reshape itself as it grows, and therefore people have to grow within that? That's much bigger, higher plane, noble stuff, right? And I don't think we always do that. We construct a people strategy that sort of says, how are we going to organise all the moving parts to kind of keep things going? I'm like, that's a mechanic talking, not a high-end car designer. You need the mechanic, but you start with a high-end car designer. So we love the thought of being able to build something noble, I think, more than we give ourselves credit for, but we don't play in that space enough.
Yeah.
So I'd start there, like, what's it all about?
Yeah.
And I think within that, it starts to unlock a little bit of what you said, which is, why did I step into this profession in the first place? That, and I'm not getting that. Should I be getting that? And how does that manifest? So it might sound a little bit kind of hokey, but it has to be that sense of the, almost like the solar plexus needs to feel the impact of what you want to do, because then you can get the head engaged, go, well, how do we do that then? And I think it also starts with, what value do we genuinely create in HR? I think we talk about keeping the lights on, keeping it safe, keeping it compliant. Not being funny, they're bottom rung, right? There's a, what do we really want to create here? With outstanding people with exceptional talent doing amazing work who wouldn't dream of going anywhere else. Like, why wouldn't you want to build that? So I'd start there.
Yeah. Absolutely, the bigger picture. And do you have any examples of organisations that you've worked with that are doing it really well? Yeah,
so I do spot a few. So I mean, one example that is kind of out in the world right now, good friend of mine, Kevin Green at First Bus. So he's gone into that group in urban transportation and what have you, with some very strong ideas about how you create a culture in a system that actually a lot of people almost take for granted, right? That the buses are always going to be on the road, taking you wherever, but they're a vital community link and so on. So he's brought that into First Bus through the HR kind of vehicle, pardon the pun. So they've looked at driver conditions, learning, rest, participation. And what I love about what Kevin's done is he said, how do we capture from our drivers and engineers and whatever, all these things that are really important to our customers that we can put into our service proposition. And he's kind of said, we'll do that through HR, not we'll set up some committee somewhere else. Because I love that, because I think he's saying we're going to stand in the space of what renewable and actually improving performance looks like. And I think that's when you get more visionary and practical. So that's a really good example of somebody who has said, HR doesn't just keep us safe, HR literally pushes us on. That's the stuff.
Yeah, amazing. Now, you said that 2025 was PTHR's toughest year on record, which it takes a lot of guts and bravery to talk online and publicly about that. What did you learn about not just, I guess, the business and the work that you do, but yourself during that tough time? And if you're open to sharing a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right that we don't surface that kind of stuff enough, perhaps in little quiet private conversations. And I mean, I don't want to get into these oversharing declarations to try and invoke some sense of sympathy. But I think people do need to know that you're giving it your best shot, but it is really hard. And actually, if I don't show up as much, or I'm a little bit sort of short and thrifty or whatever, then that's probably why. So it does impact on your behaviour. Yeah, I went through a series of kind of questions about, like, have I lost my touch? Is the product the right product? So I think what you do when you start to see less coming in, you start to get a little bit like, maybe the offer's not right. So you start thinking about, how do you position it? You don't go hard sell, because that almost feels a bit too desperate. But you do go, maybe what we've got is not quite what we need, so let's adapt that and see if that works. So you do quite a bit of probing, and it tells you a lot about whether that's even on the money or not, because most of it is completely pointless, because you're almost just trying to re-engineer what you got with a different wrapper, right? So then you kind of go, what do I exist for and what do I want to do? You have to get into that visioning thing, right? So I think the read in the market is really tough, because the read in the market gets confusing, and then you overcompensate with your response to it. And I think what I've learned is there is a way to analyse this market and go, this isn't just a blip, this is how it is going to be. So you have to think differently about how do I go to market, what can I offer, and what matters to people. So I think I've changed my dialogue, and I've also found that if you let yourself in those moments of a bit of compression and doubt, that actually the way out of it isn't just to tinker with what you got, it's to think, what's this really telling me? And that's where I started to think much more expansively about what I want to see in the world of work. So I'd sort of lost that. I'd gone into a little bit more transactional product orientation too heavily, not in the visionary, draw people's interest and then see how that product itself. So that's literally the year. I think without it, I guess it's almost like the squeeze happens and then it tests what you've got, but out of that comes something which would never have happened otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of get stuck in that transactional
You do.
space where you've kind of got your blinkers on and you're just kind of grinding and working and
Exactly.
working and working. And then you're not really sure
Nope.
if it is working or not.
Yep.
But then sometimes I think when you step back and
Yep.
stop trying to force in a way,
Exactly.
that's when all the good stuff happens,
Oh,
and
totally.
kind of let loose of the reins a little bit and remove
Yeah.
that tension.
Yeah.
I think that's when you can get more creative and give
Yeah.
yourself some space to
Yeah.
be the visionary and see, right, where are we
Yeah.
actually going here?
So true.
And we've been similar at Eda, you know, we
Okay.
started the business and you have this big vision
Mm.
and you can see where it's going. And then obviously then you're starting to run a business and
Yeah.
you've got your operating model
Yeah.
and you've got the day-to-day work
Yep.
and you get in this kind of transactional
You
kind
do.
of phase, which and it's a big reason why we started this podcast, to
Right.
be creative, speak to
Nice.
people who are doing good things,
Nice.
and it helps us learn and grow as a business, and we can
Good
learn from
point.
people like yourself that are doing
Great.
things, and then it helps us inform our thinking inside the business, inform our product, and you know, our kind of the way we operate ourselves. So
Yeah, it does feel like we're running multiple tracks, right? And that's not
Mm.
just entrepreneurialism. I see it in all sorts of corporate roles,
Yeah.
which again got me thinking about why is that? And before we recorded this podcast, we were talking about how intense work has got and how it feels like we're working harder, but maybe the outputs aren't quite as kind of slick or dynamic as they could be. It's like, what's going on there? It is a very confusing state. It's very complex. And we are running multiple tracks. That got me thinking about the fact that actually we are always running an organisation that has its legacy and its future.
yeah,
And you're kind of oscillating between them all the time. And if you don't have that realization like you just described, it just feels like a mushy obstacle building thing, because you're looking at the legacy as an interference, because you're seduced by the future. And if you spend time in the future, like, I'm not paying attention to the now, what's going on? So you kind of hate yourself in dual reasons, right? And I think if you let yourself flow in between them, almost like you don't have a choice in it, I think that can be a bit settling. And I'd say that's kind of where I am now. So I've gone through a year of quite turbulent, cranking handles not working, sitting and thinking and dreaming, and then thinking, how do I turn that instant? I'm much more comfortable with that now. Yeah.
brilliant. So when it comes to HR, HR's been told it needs a seat at the table for a very, very long time in the boardroom and all that type of stuff. Do you think we are now getting there, or do you think there is a little way for us to go?
Yeah, I've often said a bit of a response to this, which is don't covet a seat at the board table. Go and sit in the canteen, a table there, because you listen to real stories of real people, and that's what matters. I'd say that's what Kevin Green's done at First Bus, right? So, and that's given him extra credibility at the board table. So, do I think it's inevitable? I think there are still some very strong misunderstandings in the business leader world about what HR's there to do. So I think it's incumbent on you to say, what are you doing at the top table? And why aren't I in there when it's to do with people, talent, energy, skill, succession? More boards are troubled by things like automation, skills, work recombination, and what does that mean for the talent I've got and what I need? So it's almost like, how on earth can you keep HR out of that? And I am seeing some almost like subtle recombinations where, irrespective of whether HR's at the board table, it's in cahoots with the IT director, it's in cahoots with ops, it's in cahoots with marketing. And it's almost like, I quite like HR to even be a bit partisan if it's not invited in, and just get on with it anyway, prove the merit, and then you won't even have to be asked. You'll become the one who hosts things at the table. So don't chase it, just create the conditions that make it inevitable, is what I'd say. That takes hard work and a bit of guts and guile, but I think we're up for it, because all roads lead to people, work design, outputs, income, all that, and we've got a lot of the answers at our disposal. So I think it's not quite a rite of passage, but I think the inevitability of it isn't just down to us anymore, but we've got to capitalise on those opportunities that it will be inevitable.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree.
Yeah.
And you talk about wanting people to flourish at work, which whether that's the HR department or all employees on the ground. And I'm a big advocate for people showing up to work, and we talk about work and home life and them being separate, and actually they're not so much anymore. But I don't believe that you should go to work and be miserable. I feel like the workplace can be somewhere that you go to and you flourish and you feel 100%, or it inspires you and you can dream big at work. I don't believe that And we're banging the drum constantly that it should be a place which, for many people, the live existence is they go to work and they're quite miserable and disengaged and unhappy. And I just completely disagree that should be the case.
Yeah.
What is the single biggest thing, do you think, that gets in the way of people flourishing at work?
So I think it comes from two angles. I think the first angle is the way we have designed work unbelievably secures that outcome. And that's because perhaps those people who have designed work just don't care enough that that's a potential byproduct of it. They kind of see people as a reusable commodity. And I've even sat in a room with an exec team who's kind of said that. Like, well, if they don't like it, there's more people queuing up. I'm like, whoa, seriously? And I kind of walked away from that organisation because I couldn't persuade them otherwise. So that's a bit damning, that it's a felt but also a designed experience. The other thing that comes into this, and this is probably less likely to create the impact we want, but I think it will help, is I don't think people know who they are and what they're capable of anyway. They kind of accept a kind of role thinking that's all I'm good for. Or they have a little delusion of grandeur, find that's not right and get a little bit stunted by it and then just go, I'm going to play safe. So there's something missing in how people can say, who am I? What am I good at? What does that look like in a work proposition? And how do I find that? And I kind of think, how have we missed that? How do we have so many people who go through the academic kind of qualification route and so on and still come out the other end going, I still don't know what I want to do? I'm like, wow. I'm not suggesting that people have to shrink themselves to fit in a job vessel, right? Because I think that's part of the problem. But I think people who genuinely don't know what they're good at and what lights them up can't find that job if they don't know what that is. So there's a duality to it. If we design the system better, that should invoke that sense in people. But I think what I'm starting to see is that people are getting a little bit more familiar with what they're about, what they want to do. And it's not just a generational thing, but you do see some agitation on TikTok, like, this is work, I'm not doing this. I'm more capable of this. So you are starting to get a generation of people who have explored themselves a little bit more perhaps than previous generations. So that might be the power source. I know lots of senior leaders who are a bit troubled, like, I don't understand Gen Z, they're coming into the workplace. What am I going to do? It's like, well, for a start, admit that and talk to it and find out what's going on. But don't just sit on that. Redesign what your work offer is. So that's the two forces. And I'm like you, I'm quite hopeful that we're in this shift from very industrial mechanised thinking that we absolutely know is failing left, right and centre. Productivity just doesn't uptick and so on. So systemically, governments, organisations, researchers and so on have to start to think there's got to be a new proposition in town. And I think AI is catalysing that. I don't think that's the solution, but I think it's forcing us to address the weaknesses in a system we should have done decades ago.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's designing that organisational design of how do you create an attractive workplace for the new generation to come and flourish within. And it takes intention and it takes listening, I think. You've got to listen to them and understand what do people want. And there's so many generations in the workplace now. It's not just listening to the new generation. It's everybody inside of it.
It is, because there are people who aren't that age who are going, hang on a minute, life's dealt me a bit of a bun deal here. So I think you're right. There's a lot of dissent that needs to be channeled into something positive. But I was just thinking that a product like yours almost ought to explode with positive data when that's in town, so that actually people are getting the affirmation that actually this is working, and we continue to do that. I've seen some little spurts of organisations trying to get more EVP, PX, people experience stuff, and it sort of starts to get there, and then they go, oh, it's a bit tough, isn't it? And they just draw back down again. So we do need to break that cycle. So I can see it happening more than I probably could 10 years ago, because I've had little cycles of, oh, it's going to be good. Oh, no, it's not. Now I'm kind of thinking, I don't think there's any choice now. I think it's going that way.
Completely agree. If you were to go back to 10 years ago and give yourself a little bit of advice, a little whisper in your ear, what would you tell yourself?
What a lovely question. I think there's something about we've all got a quest, right? I think at the time I thought I had a quest, but I don't think I kind of dove into it enough. I've absolutely got a quest now, and it really is to kind of just hold my nerve and just stick with this concept of, I've seen a few, like I said, I've seen a few cycles of where this could go. Now I know it will go that way. So it's almost like the quest I thought I had back then, I don't think I tested it or probed it or defined it well enough. It felt a little bit like, you know, I kind of wanted to explore the world, but I only went as far as Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Makes sense,
It's
yeah.
like, what stopped me from going all the way round?
Yeah.
And it was almost like, yeah, good point. So I think I got a little bit safe and comfortable in the zone I was in, and now it's like I'm not even in a zone. I'm making up my own zone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
I
mean?
love that. But everyone is. I think I think it's quite a British thing to dream big but not too big.
Exactly.
Or think big but no, stay in your lane, of course. This is where you came from, this is what you studied, and I think hopefully there's a bit of a shake up of people, especially with AI and things and the art of the possible, but hopefully people are dreaming big and
I think so.
Aiming for something that's outside of the realm of the box that they've kind of put themselves in.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot more convergence of this is wrong, this is how we can put it right. So whereas before it felt like there were little ripples, they feel like they're really big waves now. And it's not that they're exactly the same, but there's more almost like convergence on it than I saw before. It's like that feels more powerful now. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Right, we are going to do the this or that round. So I'm going to say two things. I'm going to do a quick fire round.
Yeah.
Two things I'm going to fire at you. You have to pick one.
Okay.
As quickly as possible.
Sure.
So the quick fire round. First up, organisation design or culture change?
Organisation design.
Fix the HR function or the leadership first?
Leadership first.
Why'd you say that?
Well, I just think that we've tried to fix the HR function so many times. It's bounced off leadership being stuck.
Yeah, completely agree. Okay, self-managed teams or strong servant leadership?
Self-managed teams.
Why'd you say that?
Well, there is something about people who get into that servant leadership with good intent, and it kind of fixes a few things, but their default is still I'm in charge.
Start with the strategy or start with the people?
Start with the people. Because I think the calling doesn't need a strategy if people are called to it. And then people go, how do we make this happen? Right, let's have a strategy. But call them in first.
Yeah, absolutely. Get the players of the instruments in and
That's
then
it.
orchestrate.
Exactly that.
Okay, hiring for attitude or hiring for experience?
Hiring for attitude.
Yeah, completely agree. Gen Z employees, a dream or a nightmare?
Dream.
Everybody has said that so far.
Yeah, there's something about their just won't take it generalisation. That's almost like, hallelujah. I wish I'd have had that kind of vitality when I first got in. So I think that's such a workable energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Internal surveys, insightful or pointless?
Depends, but I would say insightful when positioned right and done right. I'd never say they're pointless. I think the only thing that's pointless about them is if you don't do anything as a result of them.
Yeah, which unfortunately
happens a lot, doesn't it?
we do see a lot.
Yeah.
And that's employees' biggest bugbear with internal surveys.
Yeah.
Okay, final couple of questions for you.
Okay.
Perry, why do you love what you do?
Wow, I never thought I'd be doing this kind of thing, actually. And when I was at school, I was really interested in law from a kind of protection point of view, journalism from just the exploratory and the writing side of things, and teaching, where you're helping people learn new things. And I feel like I do all them, but I do them all in a combination that I never knew possible. So I think there's something about when you catch yourself in that space, you're like, wow. That's kind of what I wanted to do, but I didn't know you could do it like this.
Yeah.
So that realization every time is almost like this is more a gift than you realize. Yeah.
You can tell that you enjoy the work you do. You're in exactly the place that you're meant to be in. If there was somebody who's listening, and they've just started in their career, they want to, do something that you're doing or work in HR, work in people.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
I think be aware of those two things that are in the model, actually. Be aware of the sciences about people and about how we come together socially and how we do things in a kind of organisational economic constructs. I think that science is hugely important, and it doesn't mean to say you have to go deep in one particular area. I think you can graze that field, because I think that will give you a thirst for where do we create the systems where that science makes sense and works best. Just doing one or t'other, you sort of miss out on that almost infinity loop that they create. So yes, science and systems. Because when I think back to the things I was good at school, writing was brilliant, but I was also interested in the sciences. I was just not that like leaning towards it. I am now. Like I've discovered this whole sense of science is such a brilliant field. It seems never ending. So I'd do that, science and systems.
Science and systems, I love that.
Yeah.
And if people wanted to get in touch with you, first of all, can they?
Yeah, of course can.
And where's the best place for them to reach you?
So the website is pthr.co.uk. I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot, and there's only one of me. You can YouTube search me for videos, and then I've got a kind of concept I'm writing on Substack, all about the polymorphic organisation, which is a shape-shifting new form, pthr.substack.com.
Okay, brilliant. We will tag it
Thank
below
you.
somewhere.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
you.
your time. I've really
me
enjoyed speaking to
Yeah.
you. I think people are going to take a lot away from this
good.
conversation. Also, if people wanted to buy the HR operating model book, where can they get that? Where can they find it?
Amazon, usual outlets. Kogan Page actually is the publisher's website, so I'd go there.
Okay, brilliant. And are you writing any other books at the moment?
I'm actually using the Substack. I'm kind of writing a book that doesn't need a publish, because I'm just putting out chronicles that almost feels like I'm kind of writing a never-ending book, really. So I'm trying to sort of buck that principle of having to vacuum pack it into a thing that's got a time-bound element to it. This is like, I'm writing about the future, so therefore why would I want to box it in?
Makes sense. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming
Elly.
on Meeting with HR. It's been brilliant.
Loved it. Thanks very much. Cheers.
And thank you so much for listening. My name is Elly, and you've been listening to Meeting with HR, and we will see you next time.